This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the Unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and
George.
All right, welcome back. It is a second edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com. This week is, we thought we'd dive in for another podcast. I think the secret is, the reason is we just can't get enough of hearing ourselves talk. We're full of ourselves up here. We like to, throw out information to piss off everybody and just watch it all blow up. It's been an interesting week. In the Monday pod, there was a lot of doom in that one. And I don't know how everybody feels moving forward now, but we do have some news to share with you in that Chuck Lillie is moving on to West Virginia along with Zach Alley. And we're going to talk about the inner workings of the OU football program a little bit today. So brace yourselves. Maybe just try and listen. Just see if it takes. And that way you'll be more informed and you won't freak out too much if you hear this happens or that happens. But there's a lot of things changing by the day. And first off, let's welcome in the entire crew. Josh McQuistion joins us from Houston. Welcome, Josh.
Guys, excited to be here. This should be a really interesting start to the pod here with the topic at hand.
We don't have to start there. We can talk about how Texas should have lost to Arizona State, except for the damn refs not calling targeting.
I mean, I don't think that cost them the game. Hello, everybody. That's
Eddie Radosevich.
I really enjoyed the playoffs. It was fun. I'm excited for next week. I think both those semifinal games are going to be awesome.
I was so excited for the playoff game last night that I forgot to edit out a certain part of the Portal Report on the YouTube channel. So
it's just kind of that's how the meat's made behind scenes.
The
sausage is made.
And George Stoya, the grumpiest of us all, is joining us today because he wrote the story this morning about Chuck Lillie leaving, and now he's dealing with the fallout.
He's also
from the
upset
fans.
about the FBI covering up terrorist attacks, but that's neither here nor there.
It's been a banner week for Eddie Radosevich, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of conspiracies floating around out there.
Are they conspiracies or are they reality that people don't want to accept?
I'm
not even talking about OU football.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, George Stoya is here. He's just sunken back in his chair. He's just like hats backwards.
Oh, it's
you're having a wonderful day so far.
Yeah, nothing's happened. I mean, look, they lost somebody that did absolutely nothing for the program the last 7 months today. Zero. He just was there.
You're being facetious, I believe. We can read sarcasm better on audio than we can through
No,
keyboards.
it's okay, Carrie. We could talk about the guy that did nothing at all.
Well, look.
I mean, I don't think that they I'm obviously not very high on the program right now, but it is what it is. I think more so it's just an optics thing. It's another kind of blow to this front office.
Not a blow, Eddie. It's not a blow. Don't say that
Well,
word.
it's another loss. I mean, I definitely think that you want some continuity within this thing, and if this is going to be a part of the bigger picture and the restructuring of the front office, then I'm all for it. But right now, I think from a lot of people's outsider views of what's going on, and we'll try to explain everything that's going on, I think it looks like a program in mass chaos right now. And I understand where people are coming from when they are saying what they're saying.
Okay, so here is the laying it out about what's going on right now within the walls of the football office, the athletic department. And we've written about this. Maybe people just haven't read that. Maybe you're just listeners and not readers. But Joe Castiglione has hired Randall Stevenson, a former AT&T CEO. He is in here putting his hands on every aspect of the football program currently. And, I don't know how much it extends over to other parts of the athletic department, but I'm sure what applies to football can apply to a lot of other sports. So he is in here restructuring everything, the way that they operate, the way that they deal with NIL, the way that they deal with evaluations, scouting, even, hell, I'm sure there's some business side. I mean, jobs. I mean, there are people that will be laid off because they will either get rid of their role or they will give their role to someone else. And I think what you're seeing now is Randall Stevenson has come in here, and the first thing that he's really looking at is NIL, along with Jake Rosenberg from, I believe, the Athlete Group, right? Is the consulting firm that he works with, George?
Correct.
So they're coming in here, and they're really getting their hands dirty in NIL. They're negotiating, they're making deals, they're talking with agents, and all of the things that a real, professional football general manager would do. And Jake Rosenberg has experience with the Philadelphia Eagles in doing this. And so Randall Stevenson and George, feel free to jump in here at any time. Randall Stevenson is out there meeting with everyone, making plans, reshaping the department. And you have to realize that Curtis Lofton and Chuck Lillie, they were brought in here before all of this stuff happened. I think you saw like Michigan, and this is the thing with the fans too. They're all over OU, like, oh, why aren't they hiring a GM? You see all these other schools that are starting to hire GMs. Why are they behind? Well, they went out and, I'm not going to say hurriedly, but they went out and assigned roles to people, and I think Woody Glass worked on that as the chief of staff. And so he set about they hired more recruiting people. I mean, Josh, you know this. They have I think 3 or 4 now full-time staffers when it was just 1 or 2 just to deal with recruiting. And so that department grew, and they took away from some others. And then they said, okay, we need to get our personnel department in plan. This is way before Randall Stevenson, way before, way before Jake Rosenberg, but they had just hired that firm at that point. And they tabbed Curtis Lofton to be their general manager, a guy that could help with NIL. And this was after the Caden Green mess, too. I mean, that's what really put all this in motion. Like, we've got to get our front office in order. And so we don't want to lose any more Caden Greens over misunderstandings about contracts or payments or things like that. So Curtis Lofton was already kind of working in that capacity between the football program and NIL, and kind of being a go-between, being, not necessarily brokering deals at that time, but they're like, we could put Curtis in this place. He's had NFL experience. He's dealt with signing professional football contracts. He's made a lot of money. So let's put him in this role, and it'll help stabilize us for right now. Then they bring in Chuck Lillie from Kansas State to kind of be his number 2. And so those two were working together to basically be the personnel department. What's happened now is, now that Randall Stevenson's come in, now that Jake Rosenberg's come in, they've basically been like, yes, it's a good start, but this needs to be professionalized a little bit more with people who have actually been front office workers in professional football. And so now that's what they're setting apart to do. And George, I'll throw it to you now, because you've heard names that have been thrown out there. You wrote a story this morning. It's up on Soonerscoop.com right now. You subscribe for $1 for 7 days free trial, or 7-day trial for $1. But take us from there, and what Lillie moving on means, and what Rosenberg and Stevenson are working to do here shortly in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing with Chuck is that he was somebody that was brought in to help, somewhat handle the roster management alongside Curtis Lofton, somebody that Brent Venables trusted a lot. Chuck would do, portal evaluations. He was making offers, things like that, which is usually, you have a lot of trust to from the head coach to be able to do those sort of things. Was he a huge cog in the machine? I wouldn't say so. I don't think it's a huge loss. I don't know if it's a little loss either. Like anytime somebody that is that involved in what you want to do as a program, I think it's somewhat of a loss. Now, he got offered a better job. Like that's the bottom line. He's going to get to go to West Virginia and run the show there in terms of their roster management and what they're doing. So it made a lot of sense. And OU wasn't going to, try and keep him because they can't offer him that same position. Now, if you want to be critical of the job Chuck Lillie has done, that's fair too. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't realize, though, he didn't join the staff until April. He was the somebody who was a big part of the Dominic Williams deal to get him for Oklahoma, and then he was a part of this latest portal cycle that's continuing to go on.
It's been very positive for the most part.
Depends on the way you view it.
I mean, as far as re-signing guys,
yeah,
the Jaden Jacksons.
He's been a big part of trying to help retain guys. He's maybe not a big part, but a part of that, identifying guys in the portal that they can go after and reasonably get. Now, a lot of those guys, it's TBD on if they're any good. So I think to say he's done a very poor job is a little unfair to him because it's kind of TBD on some of it. Now, again, that's up to other people. Anyways, what's going to happen next with Chuck's departure and, Carrie, you want me to get into this next part on, I guess we reported it. So what the hell?
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
That Curtis Lofton, all signs are pointing towards him maybe moving into a different role. We'll see how that plays out and what he wants to do personally and professionally. But, Oklahoma is restructuring its total front office. That's personnel, director of player personnel, like those are type of positions that are going to be open. General manager is something that they're looking to reevaluate in terms of what they want in that position. And they want somebody with NFL personnel and front office experience. And, who could that be? I'm not sure. I know there's been a lot of smoke out there about Alonzo Dotson, former Oklahoma defensive tackle that has been in the NFL now as a scout for 10 plus years, worked with the Packers, Jets, and is most recently with the Bills. He would make sense, but I'm sure there'll be other candidates. I'm not sure, but I think what this is signaling, especially this last month, ever since they brought in Randall Stevenson and ever since Jake Rosenberg has started to work with Oklahoma, is that they are taking a whole new direction. And that's, not just with Brent Venables, but that's with whoever is coaching Oklahoma moving forward, is this new approach of, Randall Stevenson has basically taken the budget and said, here's how we can get to, $20 to $22 million for the rev share. And then Jake Rosenberg has been very involved in negotiating these contracts for the players they're getting in the portal. Chuck Lillie was not negotiating contracts, from my understanding. He was.
I don't think he was. No.
He was helping identify some talent, make some offers, and kind of, come up with their big board of players that they're interested in, what positions were of need, things of like that, in which he was working with Brent Venables and the coaching staff.
Yeah, and people have to realize, like, this is. I've kind of struggled to explain exactly what this is, but this is essentially a professional department surrounding the football program that helps make with the decisions of business and roster valuations and what they pay for certain positions, what they pay for guys like a Michael Fasusi versus a guy that might be a preferred walk-on. So up and down the scale. So they know, when they're talking to somebody, if he wants double what they're normally able to pay, that they're out on that guy. And I know that's where people stop sometimes and just say, "Oh, you're cheap. I'm done with this." No, it's a whole system, and we won't go into. Nobody wants to hear us talk about the whole details of that, and we don't know all the details of it. But essentially, it is a new department that surrounds a football program that helps them just be football coaches and recruit guys.
Yeah, and I
coach guys.
I think that maybe the thing to point out here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even if something were to work out, or not work out with this coaching staff, this is a system that is going to be in place
yes.
for the future, right? This isn't just
if Brent Venables doesn't work out and he gets fired, then the front office personnel will probably most likely just stay in place and work with the new coaching
You see
staff.
a GM, get fired all the time in the NFL, but obviously a head coach gets fired and the GM stays sometimes as well.
Sometimes the GM fires the coach.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's and I know that it's different in the NFL. Like, the Dallas Cowboys certainly are their own type of organization, whereas like the Green Bay Packers have generally been a very well-respected and kind of commended front office. So it's just everybody's going to build it differently. And what OU has decided is we're going to go out and get people that have done this in the NFL, and we're going to hire people that have done this and been a part of NFL personnel departments to run our department. Whereas West Virginia's like, look, we like this Chuck Lillie guy. He's got some experience in college. We're going to let him run our whole department.
Which I don't think is...
And and Chuck Lillie wasn't that type of candidate that OU was looking for.
That's a good plan. I like that. Get guys in here that have done this shit before.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how anybody could sit there and be against it.
And it's the same with Curtis Lofton. I mean, he hasn't done that role in the NFL before. So they're coming in here, and he is either going to step away from being a part of the program, or he's going to take a different role. We don't know what that's
within
that
front office or within the program.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a personal player development.
Sure.
Maybe it's
which I think he would really excel at.
Oh,
having played in the NFL,
yeah,
he knows where these guys want to go or where they want to be. I think that would be a very positive move for him.
Basically, just a guy to keep players from getting disgruntled and quitting.
Sure. Now, I guess people will listen to that and go, "Isn't that what the soul mission's for?"
I think there's I don't know.
Sure.
The thing with all of this is that none of us really know. I would say even to an extent that OU is still, trying to figure this out. And that's why they're kind of restructuring what they're doing, because they feel like they need to go in a different direction of the structure of what's going on. But I think that soul mission will still be a thing.
Sure.
I think that'll be up to Randall Stevenson, really.
Right. But I think you're probably right in terms of what the cost and benefit is of it. But the new GM is going to be more than just hey, we need you to stay. Like, they're going to be able to do contract negotiations. Not that Curtis wasn't doing all of that, but I think they'll be, what's the right way to phrase this? More experienced, just more experienced in stuff like that. Wouldn't you think?
Well, yeah, and I think you need I think one of the problems that Curtis was running into was he was both a mentor to these guys and he was negotiating contracts, which put him in a bad situation. So a lot of time these front offices in NFL, they have relationships with the players. But they're not personal relationships where they're having dinner with them or, talking to them after a tough loss and helping them get over it. Like, there's a certain amount of professional distance that these guys will keep that you see I imagine you see in the NFL. Whereas Curtis, he loves OU, and it's all about OU and helping OU. He doesn't need the money for this. He's got plenty of money. And it's just about, can he find a place, I think, where he feels kind of fulfilled in helping the program and also having it be worth his time.
Guys, something that came up on the board that I think is kind of an interesting thing, and I George, forgive me if I missed, and you may have explained some of this. I missed a part of it. I've got kiddos home, so somebody asked me a question. With the talk and Eddie, and I think you've all mentioned it, like there is clearly an evolution of the thinking that's still happening. Like how this works best, what the best model is. Oklahoma definitely seems to be working their way through that. How much, is there a possibility that when they hired Chuck Lillie, they kind of saw, okay, this is the way we want to do this, and then they bring Rosenberg and Stevenson in, and it's like, well, let's look at this again. Like maybe, then it really does become that NFL model that we've talked about. Like we're going to do this a little differently, a little more, I guess a little less collegiately. Like I don't know of a better way to put that, but like, is there something to that of like, okay, Lillie was kind of the plan, and then Rosenberg came in, and now we're kind of rethinking how we want to do this?
It's a good question, Josh, and I don't know if I know the answer exactly. I would say it's more of there's still going to be a role for somebody like a Chuck Lillie. Like they're not going to just get rid of an assistant GM role or somebody that can assist. I think it's more so that like West Virginia came along and said, hey, we want you to run the whole thing over here. And now I don't know what West Virginia's structure is like, but that's an opportunity that I think Chuck couldn't turn down, and he's also from that area, I believe, or at least up in that area. So I don't know, Josh. That's a really good question, but I think that there's definitely some, from the way that Randall and Jake came in and everything that they've evaluated over the last month or so, they definitely viewed what they were doing systematically. They needed to change it. I think that that's the way to say it. Now, I think that they would still like to have Chuck in some sort of role. I don't know what that would be. Like, I think they trusted his evaluations. I think they trusted him as just a personnel guy, but I don't think it was, I don't know if that, does that make sense? Like they don't want to get rid of technically an assistant GM role. Maybe that role would change. I'm not sure.
I wonder if they see that almost like becoming like a true scouting role. Like you really are evaluating, and it's not so much running operations, like in the way we think of a general manager in an NFL type setting.
Well, I mean, general managers rely on a scouting department, so there's going to be some aspect. And I think, recruiting, you have your scouting department and your assistant coaches. Now, my question about that is, how is that structured? Like, do they give full autonomy to the Brent Venables and his assistants to evaluate and say, we want, even though, a lot of people are recruiting this guy, we believe in this other guy more because we think, our evaluation says, tells us he's going to be a better player. Like, how does that all? I can't imagine college football getting to a place where the head coach does not have the final say over personnel decisions.
I think we'll get there. I think that will happen, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a changing world. I mean, you look at, like the game the other night or last night. I saw people were talking about, George, on your thread, or not on your thread, but I saw the post about Marcus Freeman doing the fake out with the punt. By the way, can I just ask, like, why didn't Georgia Mike Gundy that thing?
I don't know.
Mike Gundy takes so long, and the officials let him take as long as he wants.
Yeah.
Because
the Georgia players should have walked out.
They should have literally
walked onto the field.
Yeah, they should have slowly jogged to make it look like they were sprinting to the line.
Well, I think that they thought that they were going to snap the ball before they could get out there, which obviously can't happen.
The ref was standing over the ball.
I think Notre Dame sold them. I think Notre Dame, with the way
Josh.
they moved so quickly, Georgia just got out of their head.
It was a panic. It was a panic move.
I mean, what a big brain move by Marcus Freeman. And I know the picture has been circulating on the internet all day, but his analytics guy is the guy that stands right behind him the entire game.
And guys, if you remember, he was, guys hired same year as Brent, and he was burned in 2022 and 2023 when they lost that game to Ohio State when they had 10 men on the field. He got cooked for a lot of game time decisions, but it looks like, he's putting it together, and we talk about it with players all the time. Coaches get better too, like managing that kind of stuff.
Especially when you haven't done it before. And you get to think about it too. Like, we were talking about this
Marcus
the other
Freeman's
day.
Done a great job.
Marcus Freeman, the entire staff stayed with him when Kelly went to LSU because they didn't want to work for Kelly, which is probably partly true, or they just believed in Marcus Freeman. But that's his first time doing that. So I mean, he's grown in it. And look, this isn't about we're getting off track here a little bit, but it's one of those things like, let Brent coach, and Brent, learn how to coach. I mean, learn how to put your focus towards coaching. Let these guys in the front office do the stuff that they've already. I will say this. I think Brent has successfully removed himself from NIL in any kind of negotiations or any kind of talk, because that was what everybody was clamoring for him to do, and he did that. So now I know the defensive coordinator hire, we'll know how much Brent's willing to let go when they make that hire. And it's going to be unfair to Brandon Hall if he ends up being the guy, because then they're just going to say, well, Brent's running the defense anyway. But
is that a bad thing either? Like, I don't know if it's a bad thing.
Not right now. But 2 years from now, if he survives, he's got to find someone that's just going to be able to run his defense and he can be hands off.
I think my biggest complaint, this is kind of going off on a tangent here. My biggest complaint with the program right now is everybody wants to tell you that it's not like chaos behind the scenes, and maybe that's true. I don't know. I'm not there every single day. But I wish there was more open communication about what is going on. What is the plan? Let us talk to Jake Rosenberg or Randall Stevenson or Brent Venables. I
think people just need to hear it.
Yeah, people. Yeah. I want to know, because even us trying to explain what the plan is, what they're trying to do, we only know so much. And it feels like people are so lost, and I don't blame them. I'm lost. We have people on the board. I wish somebody tagged me, was like, George, could you do a story, explaining the functions and how the structure works? And I'm like, I would love to do that, but I honestly don't know. I don't think anybody does, and that's the part that's frustrating. It's it just feels like
it's frustrating, and then on top of the frustration, I think it's overall just a level of concern that I tried to outline on Monday and didn't do a very good job, obviously. But it's just I think that everybody wants a little bit of comfort right now when you're going into an off season where we've talked about for the last month and a half, really, that it's going to be the most pivotal month or the most pivotal off season of Brent Venables' career or tenure as a head coach. And it just seems like, I don't know, the sense of urgency doesn't match what the sense of urgency is amongst us and in the fan base.
And I think there is, I know, talking to people, that there's a lot of sense of urgency. Sure. I think they want to lose. And I think they don't want to
get fired. Everybody doesn't want to lose their job.
Right. And I think they also know that, if they express this panic, then
it maybe does the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I think that's where it's coming from. I think it's frustrating for us and the fans right now just to not not really know what the plan is. And I'm sure they have a plan. We keep being told that there's a plan. And I like this idea of going out and getting an NFL, personnel, person or a scout or something. That'd be great. I think that'd be really good for the program.
Somebody like Alonzo Dotson would be really, really good.
Yeah.
He's one of the guys that, even when he got hired from the Bills or for the Bills as their national scouting director, it was basically this guy is a fast riser in the front office world.
I've also just been started to get sucked back into thinking that this team is actually the roster itself is not terrible. I really like what they have on defense coming back next year. And I think offensively they've got some nice pieces. They need some of these portal guys to pan out, but I'm starting to convince myself that they actually won't be bad.
I think at some point we just have to get.
Anybody thinks they're going to be just bad.
I don't know.
Is it going to be the same as this?
There's a lot of people. A lot of people.
7 is awful. That's worse than bad.
Yeah.
Well, and the SEC is not exactly performing as a juggernaut in the postseason.
Let me ask you guys this. I was listening to the Oklahoma Breakdown, good friends of ours, Teddy and Gabe. And I don't want to take this out of context, but Teddy was talking about next year's roster. And I think he said something like he thinks that this next year's roster will be the most talented roster Oklahoma has had under Brent Venables. Now, I think he was referring maybe to just the defense. And I think that is correct. But what do you guys think? Is this, what year would you say was the most talented roster you've had under
Brent? These first 3 years?
Well, now with the fourth year. Now, assuming they're still going to add a couple pieces.
Sure. Well, I think that when you look at the defensive guys and the guys that are coming back, the guys that we know, there's a pretty good confidence that they can be pretty good. And especially with the starting group, that starting 11, and then maybe add in, I don't know, Josh, what do you think? 5-6 guys that are going to play pivotal backup roles. But the depth, when you lose a guy like a Kenai Walker, when you lose a guy like a Lewis Carter, you're going to have to replace them. Now, maybe they feel good about some of the guys that are already on campus, and they're going to be able to elevate themselves. Maybe a Jeremiah Newcomb can do exactly what Kenai Walker was going to give you in terms of depth next season. But I do think that the portal stuff, while they haven't had just significant blows outside of maybe a Nick Anderson or somebody, it does feel like they've lost that depth that I think is rather important. I think when you look at these teams that are playing in the semifinals, they have great depth and they're able to replace guys.
Well, I mean, yeah, look at Notre Dame. Lost Riley Mills, probably their best defensive lineman, and they kicked Georgia around the field last night. Like, I mean, without all that defensive line depth. And I think I agree with George. Like, that was what I took away with it. I thought he was talking about defensive depth, but when he says the most in the Venables era, I don't even think it's close. Like, I mean, I know they lose Danny, they lose Billy, but like, you look at that defensive line group, guys, this is the best. Like, if assuming our Mason Thomas returns, that's so easily the most defensive line talent we've seen at Oklahoma, probably since Gerald McCoy and Jeremy Beal were on the team. Like, I mean, you're talking 15 years. So to me, I was like, wait, does he mean the whole roster? I got confused about that too, George. But yeah, you look at the offense, like, and I think this is just because this is one of my hallmark arguments. People love to act like that 2022 team was just so devoid of talent. And I'm like, guys, you had Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. You had Marvin Mims, who's now a Pro Bowler at receiver. You had 2 first-round picks at offensive tackle in Guyton and Anton Harris. Now, Guyton was young. Like, I get it. Like, that's a little bit of a cheat. But then you also had Andrew Rame, NFL draft pick, multi-year starter at that point. Like
Eric Gray.
Braden Willis. Yeah, Eric Gray. Like, you go down the list, there was some pretty good talent on that offense. Now, the defense was miles from where it is now. Like, we all understand that. But you still had Jalen Redmond, who's playing in the NFL. You had Jonah Lalu was in his first year there, was a good player for Oklahoma. So, I mean, I don't know, but it's definitely the lopsided nature of the roster does feel like it's just flipped dramatically from one side to the other, in my opinion.
And I think the offense is just to be determined. Like, and I think that's kind of what Gabe and Teddy ended up saying is like, it's just, there's some hope, there's some optimism, you know, like John Mateer, is he better than Dylan Gabriel? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, we don't know yet. You know, the receivers, we haven't seen almost any of them play that are being added to the roster. Even a guy like Deion Burks, who we all think is going to be a good player. The offensive line, who we all think could take another step. Like, now, if all those guys take that next step and they all reach their ceilings, then yeah, this probably is the most talented roster that they have. On the other side, some of these guys probably won't hit that. And also, they're playing the toughest schedule in all of college football next season.
Yeah, and they played one of them this season. So
yeah,
I think the receiver thing is certainly the biggest question mark about this team and whether really they could save Brent's job. I mean, because they're, you know, we'll see how all these guys do. I mean,
it's Ben Arbuckle too. Like
right,
I feel like we've already just accepted he's going to be really good. We don't know that. You know, I think he'll be better than what they put on the field this year.
I'm going to say
the bar is low.
99.9% an upgrade for sure.
Yeah, the bar is low.
I'll give you the 0.1. It's 100. It's 100% better.
Yeah.
The 0.01.
This year broke me in saying it can't get any worse because I think that this team,
I remember every one of those
found
moments.
a way it got worse every time that we thought there's no way it can get worse.
I distinctly remember just about every declaration you made, which was like, this is the lowest point, and then something else would happen.
I think it was like that after the South Carolina game. It can't get any worse than this.
I would feel a lot better about this team next year if you switched out, like, I don't know, LSU for Kentucky and, you know, I don't know, Vanderbilt for Alabama or something, you know, something like that. Like,
guys, LSU might be the third best team in the SEC.
LSU is going to be good next year, I think.
It's either Ole Miss or LSU.
They look really good.
I'd feel a lot better if Garrett Nussmeier had just went to the NFL.
Ole Miss is losing.
That would help a lot.
I think losing Jackson Dart's going to be pretty. I mean, and they lose some of those wide receivers too at Ole Miss.
Yeah, the big time guy that OU didn't face.
Trey Harris.
Oh, damn, the kid.
Yeah, Trey Harris.
Yeah, from La Tech. Yep, he's gone.
I don't think Ole Miss will be as good next year. They'll be good.
Look, we got plenty of time to preview the schedule for 2025.
My overall point being, though, is that I've started to come around to not being. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic, but I also wouldn't say I'm like this thing is doomed next year either. Like, I think that there's still some. There's definitely a path to being a good football team next year.
As much as we've talked about the wide receiver and the portal guys, I do think that, like, we'll talk about them all off season. but you have to get development out of Zion Kearney, who I thought had overall a decent bowl game and maybe started to come on a little bit, just a little bit. I mean, it was so bad offensively. Ivan Carrion, I liked what we saw. You just need some development from the wide receiver position. Then obviously if you can get Jaden Gibson back and Deion Burks, maybe you have a decent unit for John Mateer to work with. And offensive line, I think, is going to definitely take a step. We'll get into the Fasusi stuff here in a little bit as well.
Look, it's just to wrap up the front office stuff, just give it time. I mean, it doesn't deserve the panic. It's something that's in development. And that's what we've been saying, it's like I kind of did like a Ask Me Anything thing on, some stuff earlier in the week, and I think it was in response to someone else saying all this stuff was happening with NIL. And, I think the message board's a good way for me to kind of address some of this stuff, and I'll try and do more and more of that. It's harder to do it on a podcast, but if I could go in and kind of just talk to people and explain like NIL and the challenges they faced and why it's where it is and this and that, like we've been pretty clear. It needs some work, and it needs some, I don't know, not like kumbaya, but it needs people to come together in order for it to be better. And I still think, it can be better in a lot of ways. So, with this front office stuff, it's going to be just as complicated. Things change just as quickly. And it's just like with the Lofton and Lillie stuff. Like they were hired at a certain time period when things were the way they were. Now things have changed. And you're going to see turnover. You're going to see entire departments. I mean, I remember we were talking about like after the Mississippi State, like Jeff Levy fired their entire creative department. Like stuff like that you'll see happening. Like people are going to put importance on certain aspects of their athletic departments, and they're going to get rid of other parts that aren't so important. So you're going to see a lot of shifting through this offseason, especially if this House versus NCAA settlement comes to fruition and revenue sharing gets to be a part of it. You're going to see a lot of changes after that happens. So just kind of buckle up and expect to roll with some punches along the way. All right. You mentioned R. Mason Thomas earlier. Put out a very confusing video, and we're still not at a place where he has officially announced anything, but we know the NFL draft is upcoming. And I don't know if you guys know, I texted you after the poor report the other day because the dates were a little like if you're still playing in a bowl game, you can still enter the NFL draft until I think the 25th of this month. That's like 5 days after 25th the or 26th game.
I can't remember which day it is, but end of January for sure.
And I want to say February 24th maybe is when you have to pull out of the draft if you're not going to continue keeping your name in it. But most people starting on the 9th can enter their names in the NFL draft, and I think through the 16th there's some type of special exclusion or special circumstances that you can go all the way to the 16th. So it'll be there between the 9th and the 16th that R. Mason Thomas has to finally make this decision.
Yeah, or he made the announcement today and he's been very cryptic about it. I really don't know. Definitely checking in on it, though, to see what that looks like, because he's kind of a key cog in this whole conversation when you're talking about what that defense could look like, and especially at the defensive end position. Marvin Jones Jr. in town on Thursday.
Yeah, let's talk about the visits.
I mean, it was kind of a significant day, right, on Thursday, George, just in terms with having him as well as Kendal Daniels from Oklahoma State in town.
Yes. I honestly was looking at my phone, reading through the comments on R. Mason Thomas's post, so I don't know what the question was.
Just the guys that were in town yesterday, the visitors, Marvin Jones Jr., just talking about R. Mason Thomas and how significant he would be coming back. We know that.
Yeah, I also want to clarify, there's a lot of people that think OU bringing in Marvin Jones Jr. as well as William Whitlow, the defensive end from Memphis this weekend, that is some sort of indication of what Oklahoma thinks is going to happen with R. Mason Thomas. That's not the case. I've said this several times, but they're losing Ethan Downs, Trace Ford, and Caden Woolard. they had to add a veteran edge, at least one, maybe two. And if R. Mason leaves, then definitely two. But they were always going to add somebody, so that no correlation there. Marvin Jones Jr., I mean, you guys know better than I do, was very serious about Oklahoma in his original recruitment. Now, that was, I believe, Jamar Kane that was recruiting him out of high school, 5-star kid, ended up at, I believe, Georgia for the first couple years, then transferred to Florida State. Had an okay year for Florida State. Oklahoma really likes him. Obviously, a guy that they feel like could maybe start on the other side of R. Mason Thomas. So we'll see. He's also visiting Texas. In fact, I think he's getting to Texas today. And then I think he's visiting Penn State by the end of the weekend. So we'll see. Kendal Daniels. Honestly, I haven't heard much from Kendal's side on all of this. It's been more so from Oklahoma's side. They really like him. They feel like that he can come in and play, linebacker or cheetah for him. It would make a ton of sense. I don't know what Kendall's, interest is right now from Oklahoma. I also don't know a lot about some of the other schools that are maybe recruiting him. I think he visited Penn State a while back, but I think OU would love to get him if they can. I just don't know. And especially right now with no, linebackers coach or defensive coordinator, might be a tough one to sell. I don't know. I also don't know if Brent's back in town, if he's been able to talk to Kendal Daniels or what's going on there. But, if they could get those two guys, it'd be huge.
Josh, just as a little bit of a, trip back in time, what happened with Kendal Daniels in Oklahoma the first time around?
Yeah, for those who, don't realize that the scoop's up, I posted this a little while ago. We kind of went over some of this. The thing with Kendal was Oklahoma offered him early. He was, the number one guy in the state. He was a big-time prospect. It was always one of those deals where, I don't know where he's going to play, but he's clearly really talented. And I think that's what Oklahoma struggled with early on. It was just kind of where does he fit into that Alex Grinch defense. There wasn't an obvious role where I think we all can see a role that makes sense for him now in this current defense. But I think 4 years ago it was a little tougher to see. So they kind of went back and forth. There was never, I don't know if there was ever really a full gung-ho, yep, this is the guy, we got to have him. There wasn't that thing. And we know about how OU handled in-state recruiting back then.
Sure.
And I think it kind of came to a point finally where OU said, okay, Kendal, we want you on the boat. We want you in the boat, but you've got to decide. And they gave him a deadline and basically said by this date, I want to say it was mid-June, if I remember right. And he didn't. He went past it. He knew the deal. I talked to Kendal about it. And I kind of think he didn't think they would back it up, and they just kind of walked away. And I think within a week he had committed to Texas A&M, if I remember correctly. It all went down in pretty quick order. Now, eventually he ends up at Oklahoma State, but I think it was just really a matter of, excuse me, I don't think they were ever on the same page. It felt like the two staffs were working, or Kendal was kind of working at something different than OU was. I don't think there was any bad blood between anybody. And that's the interesting thing. George was talking about hearing it from Oklahoma's side. When I talked to people at Beggs and kind of around that program, they frankly were surprised he took that trip. They didn't think he was going to come down and visit Oklahoma. And again, I don't think it's bad blood. I think he was just thinking I'm going to go do something different. I may get out of state. So it sounds like over the last week or so, which is really when Oklahoma went from 0 to 100 with Kendal Daniels, that it really has. They've hit the right notes with him. It sounds like they're really making good progress in his direction.
I remember, Josh, when he was coming out, Brent was talking to him, and that's when Clemson had Isaiah Simmons, and he was pretty much the face of linebackers across college football at that point. And it seemed like they were kind of selling him on, you come in here and you be the next version of him. How good was that relationship with Brent that developed when he was in high school?
It was good, and I know Kendal was super interested, and I think what it ended up coming down to is I think Clemson just didn't think he was going to leave. They didn't think they would get him out. They thought he was going to go to Oklahoma, which, guys, if you remember, this is one of the craziest commitment stories I ever remember reading. When he committed to A&M, he basically said, I wanted to go to Oklahoma. I was going to go to Oklahoma. You don't usually like usually kids will protect their ego a lot more than that. And I remember really respecting Kendal for being that honest about it. He was like, they told me I didn't do it, and they basically, I mean, pulled his offer is strong. Like, that's not the way I would word it, but they definitely were like, okay, man, we've got to move on to other guys. Like, they just had to move in a different direction. So, but yeah, again, I thought there was a good relationship, and I can tell you some conversations that I may have had with a then Clemson staff member. They really liked him. Like, they liked Kendal Daniels a lot. They did a lot of background on him. There absolutely was true interest there when, Clemson was recruiting like a machine at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I remembered that might have been a good relationship. All right, Michael Fasusi, star of stars this week at the Under Armour camp. What can you tell us about what you've talked to about people, down there that watched him play and work out?
I think the thing that everybody keeps coming back with was how consistent he was. Like, that's the thing. You'll see great reps, and I should say, guys, Kerry, you and I talked about me going down there, but it was like there's one guy. Like, usually I go down, there's 5, 6, 7 commitments, and there's a lot for me to take in, a lot of good content we can get out of it. But I was like, it's one guy. Well, if I'd have known Michael Fasusi was going to be the freaking MVP, like, I'd probably go anyway, and we get some cool content out of that. But I didn't know he was going to have this great of a week, so I'm a little frustrated about that. But in the people I've talked to, it was really, like I said, rep in, rep out. He was very good. I think Cody Belair mentioned, and it's good when you're like, except for that one rep and one-on-ones he got beat on. It's the only rep he can remember that Michael Fasusi wasn't fairly dominant. And you're like, that's pretty good when you can single out your bad moment from a week of practices in a game. And so, again, I think it just elevates what you think of Michael Fasusi, guys. I mean, like, I know, right now I think On3's got him something in the 20s with their ranking, and, his overall, industry ranking is 13. Guys, I'm going to guess after that he's going to push into the top dozen or so for On3. And you're talking about a guy that could nationally be, somewhere around 6 or 7 in the country. Oklahoma's never had an offensive tackle like this. And all the great ones we've watched, the Lane Johnsons, the Trent Williams, they've never signed a guy with this kind of, at this point it's hype. We know it is. But it's a really good sign. I was talking to some people last night, and there was definitely like this feeling of like, well, this kind of puts some pressure on Bill Bedenbaugh to get this guy on the field. And what I do think is interesting, because this was always my hang-up, with the emergence of Logan Howland later in the season, he's a left tackle. That's what Mike has primarily played. Mike played a lot of right tackle this week in Orlando and looked really clean and really comfortable. There's a big old hole over there, guys. We know there's nothing at right tackle that's set in stone. And to me, that's got to be, if I'm Bill Bedenbaugh, like, I'm giving him his first run there. I want to see what he can do and if he could go take that spot.
I can't wait for week 2 and Logan Howland or Derek Simmons gives up a sack, and it'll be Michael Fasusi needs to play immediately.
That was kind of my question, Josh. Does that change anything? The way that he performed against that level of competition, is he maybe a little bit more ready than you thought going into this week, or is it you still got to do it when you get to campus? And obviously he would have to, but
yeah. I mean, you know that part. But, I will say it does change it a little bit because, guys, there's a lot of really good pass rushers. It's not just, because in the last few years, you'd gotten it to where it had gotten a little watered down because some of the seniors were already going to their teams. They're already going to bowl practices. So you weren't seeing that. But this year, with the change of the rules that I'm not sure everybody's aware of, the bowl game, the All-Star games opened it up to every class. So there are some big-time juniors there that are looking to make a name for themselves. You've got some younger guys that are, they're getting their first taste of this real national spotlight kind of stuff. And so for him to go and perform like this against a really good group of defensive linemen, I think is a great start. And I do. It changes my clock a little bit. And again, I think it forces Oklahoma to be like, there's no way we can do, like the thing we've seen them do, even probably the Caden Green plan is probably too slow. where they spent, half a year. Now, I will say, because George, you're dead on. The same people are like, Michael Fasusi should be guaranteed a starting spot right now, are the same people that were burning Logan Howland alive during the Ole Miss game. Like, nope, there's going to be growing pains. It's going to be bad sometimes, and that's okay. Like, if you want to say, I'm here for the growth and I'm going to let this guy develop, great. But you have to accept that there are going to be bad moments. That's absolutely going to happen, even when you're as talented as Michael Fasusi. You're going to have hang-ups.
There's not a guy on that line that didn't get – I mean, Heath Ozida, people wanted him out of the lineup at one point. I mean, any freshman is going to have those moments.
Well, and we just have to remember, too, that – I mean, everybody knows it, but Bill very rarely will play true freshmen a ton, and we just have to be aware of that. And
because he hates that, too, as much as the fans do.
Yeah.
He probably wants to yank Heath Ozida out, as much as the fans do. Probably before the fans do.
Was it Eugene Brooks that had like a great – was it Under Armour All-America? Something he went to something last year.
Yeah, he was awesome there last week. Yep.
And now he didn't. I don't want to just say that like that means that nobody's.
That's the end all be all.
But I'm just like I take it. I think it's great. Fasusi went down there, and it sounds like he was fantastic. I mean, I know Brooks was good last year at this camp, but not like Fasusi did.
Not like this.
Yeah.
Again, with Mike, I mean. The thing that I like, because it's something I saw during the season, he is so strong with his hands, like that initial punch, and that's the stuff that can hold up. Like if you're good, defensive ends coming at you and you're striking hands and keeping him off, like you're getting a little, you're keeping him from doing what he wants to do, getting his hands on you and throwing you around and that kind of stuff. I think that can hold up. But again, to me, Mike's got to get on campus. He's probably got to put on 15 pounds. They've really got to make that a concerted effort. He needs to be living on like whey protein and peanut butter and jellies, like just constantly adding all the mass and all the weight he can, because he's a naturally lean guy. I mean, Eddie, you saw him several times in person. He's not gonna. I don't see Mike ever being like the guy we're like, oh, we went too far here. Like I just don't think that's who he is, both from kind of his character and just his body type. I don't think that's the way that's going to go. So they need to get him on, as many calories as he can withstand. And if he'll do it in the weight room and can kind of commit, guys, I think you're hard pressed to not get him into the lineup fairly shortly, just because of what he means kind of to the future. I hate to put all that on one guy, but we talked about the same thing in recruiting. Like, if you can get that guy out there and he's your next superstar and you get to present him as this is the next first rounder, you really start building some, that momentum kind of back again in your offensive line recruiting.
I'm going to tell you, I'm just playing through in my head now, but like you look at the size of Heath Ozida, Eddie Pierre-Louis, like the way that you're talking about Michael Fasusi, I feel the same way a little bit about Logan Howland, because he's a big dude, tall dude, but he can fill out some. Like there's a lot more weight that he can carry. I mean, I'm getting kind of excited because I do see in another year OU having a true SEC offensive line that gets off the bus and people are like, holy shit, look at those guys.
And that's why I've started to come around a little bit optimistic, because I think they have an SEC defensive line. Josh is laughing at me,
George. Like, no. I'm with you. Like, I told you guys in person after the pod earlier this week. Everybody's so pissed off and like, you guys are so negative. I don't know if it flushed something in my system. Like, I was kind of. I mean, I'm not saying my overall outlook has changed, but I kind of have started to think. I'm like, okay, if this fell right and this worked out, okay. Like, yeah, I can see a path. Like, I can kind of make sense of it. And you're right, George, like having that defensive line to go against all off season to get better, to get, like, okay, I can kind of get there with you. There are issues that I'm not sure of. What is funny to me, and I was just thinking about this, to me, if you can get through 2025, like in year, 8-4, 9-3, whatever is deemed appropriate for the staff to remain, I feel way better about 2026. Even now, as we sit here with so many variables that we couldn't possibly know, I feel way better about that possibility than I do 2025, which I think has some good things that we do know.
Can I throw out one scenario that could be another, holy shit, what if this happens? OU could be really good. What if offensively next year, David Stone is played by the role of Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje is the Jaden Jackson?
Be fantastic.
Somebody brought this up on the board. It's kind of uncanny, the comparison. Like, other than they don't play together in high school. But, like, everybody knows Foje's good. Everybody knew Jaden was good. They're both, like, really technically gifted. But they're not, like, the freaky athlete that their other is. And I wouldn't rule it out because, again, just a second ago, I'm talking about Michael Fasusi playing right tackle in this game. That's all Ryan Foje's played. He's always been the right tackle to Jonte Newman, who went to A&M's left tackle at Bridgeland. So he's got a lot of experience at that position. And, I mean, it kind of feels like if those guys will come in and they're ready, something's going to happen at right tackle. I don't know what it's going to be, whether it's Sexton, Taylor, Backlenko, Simmons, Foje, Fasusi. Somebody's going to come out of there, kind of out of that trial by fire, and probably be a pretty good football player. Like, it may not be immediate. It may take them a little time. But you're like, oh, okay, I can get there where you can find a quality player that can do the things you need to at that position.
They at least have options. This last year, they didn't have any options. And it felt like they didn't have options at multiple spots.
Well, and they have a lot of young guys that'll be in another year advanced, like a Daniel Akinkumi and guys like that. Not saying that he's going to be a guy, but that's more options than you had this year.
For sure.
I'd just like to be able to take that if out of everything that we're talking about. If this happens, I'd like to be able to say, this will happen, believe in it, they're headed in the right direction. But, yeah.
But you have to admit, the offensive line is not as much of a stretch as any other position on offense. Like, offensive line, there are not enough ifs for tight ends, and there are very few ifs for wide receivers.
Offensive line, defensive line, I'm pretty content with everything they've done. Everything that they have coming back and all the development that has taken place. Heath Ozida, Logan Howland, all those guys coming back, EPL, feel pretty good about it. Because at the end of the year, whether we like to talk about it in a positive manner or not, they were playing better from what it was. And, I think a little bit of that had to do with just Troy Everett coming back and they were able to play with each other a little bit. Pause. But it is concerning when you look at some of these other positions and knowing what could come here over the next month or 2 months going into spring. I would like, the tight end situation. I don't think it's going to just get better overnight. I'd like the sense of urgency to be there that we feel that's needed. Doesn't certainly feel like it. I think it is inside the program or inside the offices, but I'd like to see a little bit more action on that. And then obviously the coaching stuff, like with the staff and who's going to be back on this staff next year.
It's funny because I've sat here and like kind of convinced myself this week, like, they'll have a chance to be good, and that's not changing. But then every time I'm like, well, and then you have the tight end position, and you're just like, what the bleep is going on there?
Don't take us back to Monday. Let's not go back to Monday. By the way, Monday made an impression all over there. There was one fan.
Eddie stirred up the masses.
I think
people
took
someone trying to
boycott us or start a boycott of Sooner Scoop.
It was. It is what it is. People could be mad at me. That's fine. I was just voicing my concern.
I think it's a valid concern. Any criticism of the program right now is justified.
And the reason I bring that up is because it went so far, and we know that. Look, you are the true heroes of the Unofficial 40 wives across the country because your husbands force you to listen to us, and fortunately, I think they have the women that stick have a good sense of humor, and they get what we do is screwing around most of the time. We've had kids come in here and recite the entire opening of the Unofficial 40. Just when we see this stuff, we love it because it makes us, we're just a bunch of jackholes just screwing around. But to know that we make an impact on people, it's flattering. And we had one listener that he asked his wife to do her impression because she's been forced to listen to this podcast, I'm sure, in the car a lot on trips and things like that. And she has her own impression of our Monday show that was just generated all these reactions. George, I think you've probably heard this already, haven't you?
Eddie played it for me.
Josh is not. So we're not giving out names or outing anybody. This is just a
friend of the program.
A friend of the program's wife, who is now, we're big fans of. Her impression of what listening to the Unofficial 40 was like on Monday.
Do your Sooner Scoop podcast impression.
All we can do is say how he should coach when we've never coached a game, but we could be better coaches. I approved of the first hire. I was fine with that. But then, the extension, it just doesn't even make sense anymore when we're paying players and Michigan gets a good quarterback for $60 million, and there's just so many red flags, and we're going to fucking cry about coaching.
It's so good. I love that. I love getting that text message earlier this week.
Oh, boy.
You got to understand, we're stupid. So take everything with a grain of salt. No, it is what it is. I think everybody, at the end of the day, and I put this in one of the threads today on the Crimson Corner, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people, and I would say a good majority of Oklahoma fans that could give a flying fuck about like what's going on behind the scenes, as long as you can come down to Norman and get with all the friends that you had in college and all your friends now and live in Oklahoma City or Dallas or wherever, and come home and watch OU win. And that, at the end of the day, I think that's what a lot of people want, and we understand that. There's just, I think in today's world, you got to kind of not necessarily pay attention to all the other stuff, but the other stuff is in play with getting to that final outcome.
It matters.
Right.
It matters.
Right.
And we're trying to make sense of it, and sometimes that's really hard to make sense of all of this that's happening. And I think, like I said earlier, I think OU is maybe struggling with that at times to try and make sense of what's the best path forward in terms of winning football games. And with the way that college football's changed so much, I think it's difficult. And we all want Brent to succeed. Like we all want that to happen. And it's just like how can that happen?
We'll also fire him.
Yeah. But, I think the reality of the situation is, and Kerry, you've said it multiple times on here and in our group chat, the reality is that Brent's going to be back next year. And so what does that look like, and what's the path forward to success to figuring out? And what's the path of it going off the rails and it not succeeding? And we're back here next year, talking about a new head coach. I don't know, but I think
we all need spring football to start tomorrow is what we really need.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because we need to get out there and see with our own eyes if this is as bad as we think it could be, or if it's better than we think it could be.
And we won't even know then, though.
Yeah, but, still, you get to see Mateer. You get to see Ben Arbuckle and his offense. It's just, I think it's important. And like you guys said earlier, it would also be nice if people kind of got in front of a microphone and talked to the fans.
I think that right now, for me, that's the most reasonable thing that I think they can do is whether it's Joe C., Brent, Randall Stevenson, Jake Rosenberg, Ben Arbuckle, whoever, let us talk to these people and understand what exactly is going on,
The invite is open
a little bit.
The invite is open.
We have a studio on Campus Corner. Come on,
welcome
down.
anytime. We will record at your leisure. We're open for business, for you to talk to the fans. So there you go. Invitation extended.
Same goes for Kamala Harris.
Oh, God.
Invitation extended.
Anyway. Okay. You guys want to talk a little CFP?
Yeah, we can. I thought
By the way, you guys mentioned, and maybe Josh, you brought this up about Georgia's receivers are just bad.
It's crazy.
But you mentioned, the guys at Notre Dame were missing, I think, the big defensive linemen. And they're still playing really well. Give Arizona State some credit. They were down so many receivers, and because of you got a guy like Cam Scattaboo, but those other guys stood up and made plays against a Texas. Actually, I would say embarrassed Texas's defensive backs in the second half a little bit in what they were able to do.
I don't know. Embarrassed might be a little much.
Physically, they embarrassed them.
They made some nice plays, though.
Let's also just Texas was in total control of that game until they completed a halfback pass.
I've truly never seen a not necessarily a team meltdown, but blow a lead like they did.
But you say they were in control. They had 2 to 3 really big plays at the beginning to go up 17-3, and then they really didn't do much.
Yeah, but I want to
overtime.
But they scored in the fourth quarter to go up 16.
Yeah,
and Arizona State
28-16.
To be fair to your point, Kerry, Arizona State they were moving the ball and then they just couldn't score. But my point was I think we all thought Texas was the better team the majority of that game, and then Arizona State hit some big plays,
especially on the lines.
Yeah.
Like Texas, what they were able to do with the defensive line in the first half, I was sitting there thinking, this is one of the biggest, like the college football playoff is a joke. Coming off the heels of the Boise State game on Tuesday night, which was close, but it was never really, I never felt like Penn State was going to lose that game. But Texas.
You guys know, like, I'm the biggest Cam Scatteraboo fan that there is. Like, because I'm usually up here late at night editing and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching a lot of Pac-12 at night over the years.
Well,
and then last year turned the Big 12 at night. But, like, Cam Scatteraboo always is a second-half guy. Like, he wears defenses down throughout the game. But, you know, he was frustrated. You could tell. But they did start physically dominating Texas at the line of scrimmage.
Even in the third quarter, though, like, they showed that shot of Scatteraboo, and he had just thrown up or whatever on the sidelines. And I was like, my God, he's just getting the shit knocked out of him.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, and even the body language that the Arizona State players, like, pushing each other, and it just felt like they were about to get blown out by 30.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they made one play, the Scatteraboo pass, that he wasn't even supposed to throw downfield. He was supposed to go to the quarterback, supposedly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he makes that play, and it was, then they got the 2-point conversion. It was like, okay, wait a second. They're only down by a possession.
They made both the 2-point conversions look easy, which was crazy.
And I thought too. I thought Texas's offense, especially Ewers in the second half, just was missing on some things. Because I think one thing that, and we talked about this,
he's a chronic underthrower.
100%. But the one thing I think Sark does a really good job of is designing stuff to where it's really wide open a lot of times, or like getting guys in good spots and making it easy for the quarterback. I felt like Arizona State was able to disrupt some of that, but then I think Ewers just missed on several stuff.
By the way, I didn't know what to think about the whole Sarkisian talking to Bert Auburn before the second kick. I thought, well, that's really weird. I don't know. Most coaches wouldn't do that. And then the next day, McAfee and Saban ripped the shit out of him.
Yeah,
Saban said something really funny.
Whatever happened, it was
also,
not good.
I the targeting call, terrible. I don't know how you don't call that targeting. At the same time, Arizona State had every opportunity to win that football game still in overtime.
Because Bert Auburn missed 2 field goals.
It was 4th and 13.
And I will say, like, I know that Ewers catches a lot of shit, but when it got to nut cutting time, he was like 14 of 16 for over 150 yards.
Yeah.
He played very, very well.
That throw
to get
that
him
he
to
made
that point.
to the tight end was perfect. I mean,
to Gunnar Helm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the throw to Matthew Golden on the sideline to set him up for the first field goal that they missed before the end of regulation. I thought that was Matthew Golden. Jeremiah Smith's going to be the best player on the field next week, but somebody that could like really flip this game upside down if Texas were to go on and win. I think you look back and you go, Matthew Golden had a huge game. What do you think?
Is he an Arizona State transfer?
No.
Golden, no, he's from U of H.
Right.
He's a Houston area kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Guys, I don't know, and I was dead wrong about this game because I think I talked about it last week. I was like, there's no way Arizona State hangs with Texas. Like, I just didn't think they could do it. I thought they'd get bullied up front. I thought the lead we saw in the first half is how the game would go. They'd win 35-14 or something and just kind of, big brother Arizona State through the whole game. Ohio State looks like a death machine right now. Like, they look...
That might be the best first half.
I don't know.
They look like
played by a college football team.
I think it's pretty clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think they have the best roster in college football. Like, from top to bottom, talent-wise, they have the best roster.
Guys, I mean, think of all the other teams that you don't even take the Final Four. You can take every team that was in the playoff. Who has a combination like Jim Knowles at defensive coordinator and
Chip Kelly
at offensive coordinator? Like, those are Hall of Fame guys at their position.
But then they also have, and then you just look at their roster. They have, I think, one of the best running backs in the country. The safety that they got in the portal, Caleb Downs.
Was huge.
Wide receiver.
He's so good.
Their offensive line is massive. Their defensive line has been sensational. Like, my only question with Ohio State is, can Will Howard do it? And he has shown in the playoffs so far that he can. Like, he's been incredible.
Get the ball safely to those guys.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, with all that said, I agree with you. With all that said about Ohio State, for a week, this is going to be the conversation of Ohio State's the best team in the country. Texas has no chance to win this football game. And just from it, somebody that will be very clearly cheering for Ohio State to win, that scares me. It scares me a little bit.
And we haven't seen it from Ryan Day. Like, Ryan Day winning the big one, and just we saw them all shit their pants against Michigan. And maybe that's just a Michigan thing. Maybe they just can't beat Michigan. But
I think there's something to that.
But I think they have as good a chance of anyone to win it.
Texas isn't going to bully. Like, they're not going to try to shorten the game and beat you, just beat you to death up front like Michigan wants to do. Michigan just wants to drag you down in the mud and have a fight. Like that's
Sark's
the way
more
they're going to play that every
misdirection
time.
And play design.
Yeah. Like what do you you're going to get Caleb Downs out in space? Fine. Okay, try it. Like, run Quintavious Wiesner out, on a little running back screen. Fine. Caleb Downs is probably going to blow that up. If he won't, Simon will. Like, that was to me, that was the difference in that game. The Simon kid at linebacker did such an unbelievable job keeping Dylan Gabriel in the pocket. Dylan kept looking out, trying to find space, and that guy was just in his face all night long. And I thought that was clearly, and again, that's not what Texas does. I'm not saying that's a comparable thing, but I did want to say, because we got away a little bit from the Texas-Arizona State thing. Guys, I was thinking about this while watching the Ole Miss game last night. So we talked about Trey Harris a second ago. He was all but set to go to Oklahoma. Like, Oklahoma thought they had Trey Harris before Ole Miss came in and just dropped a massive bag on him. They also thought they were going to get Jordan Tyson, that was the Arizona State star receiver this year. So you could have had Tyson, Trey Harris, and Nick Anderson, whatever you had at receiver. It's just unbelievable how close that wide receiver room was from just being silly good.
I do think the winner of Ohio State Texas is winning the national title. I think Notre Dame can do it in a one-game setting. I think that they can, and I think they're really talented and well coached. It just feels like Texas and Ohio State have the most talent and are just the more maybe complete teams.
They definitely have the most talent. I've been super impressed with Notre Dame, and if you look at the numbers and what they've been able to do outside of the Northern Illinois loss, which is just unspeakable. I don't know how that happened coming out of the week one win in College Station. But
what's crazy to me is Penn State. Nobody's going to talk about them. No. But they could beat Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
I mean, Drew Aller is the mirror image of Riley Leonard on the other side. I mean, he can run the ball, and he's a better thrower. But, I mean, to me, what's 44's name for Penn State?
That's why I think that both games are going to be awesome.
Dennis Sutton's 33.
The tight end.
Oh, Tyler Warren?
Yeah.
Tyler Warren.
Tyler
I'm
Warren,
sorry, I'm thinking defense.
He could be the biggest difference in that game. Look, I understand Notre Dame made some plays, but am I wrong, Josh, or did that seem like the worst effort that you ever seen on a kickoff return when Notre Dame ran that all the way back? They just allowed themselves to just get folded under
three guys. Had him tackled.
But they didn't give enough effort. I mean, it's I don't know if three guys were letting two guys block him. I wasn't that impressed with that return. I thought it was more an indictment on Georgia's effort than it was on Notre Dame just having some great return guy.
I think it was just one of those things coming out of halftime. That's the last thing you think is that they're going to run it back. And maybe that's it.
I think it was a great play, but I think it was a great play by Notre Dame, and Georgia missed some tackles. I don't know if it was Georgia wasn't trying. Georgia hasn't been good all year.
That's
when I say that they haven't been
dominant.
They haven't been the elite Georgia team that's won a national championship the last 2 years. It's crazy.
How does Georgia have a Stetson Bennett problem? They can't win it without Stetson Bennett.
What's going on with Rashada though?
I liked their quarterback last night. I mean, he had a big arm.
Stockton looked good.
I mean, their receiving room is terrible.
Yeah, it is bad.
It's crazy.
Bell is their best receiver, and I think he's a converted running back.
He drops everything.
That's probably why they tried to get Deion Burks.
Yeah.
Hey, John Raggins is from Georgia. Don't go to sleep.
Did you guys?
I mean, they could use Jalil Farouk. They should have given him more money.
100%.
Sorry.
I think he's getting a lot of money.
That's what I heard.
think he's getting a lot of money at Maryland. Did you guys see the Katie McFarland stat? I know that Brent talks about the middle eights all the time.
I did see that
for Notre Dame. What they were this season in the middle eights, 152-10.
Wow. Freeman's done a heck of a job there, man. And those players love him.
Yeah.
And he just looks cool as shit, too.
They got a nice. Well, Notre Dame just got it. It's an all-time look.
Yeah.
It's a classic look.
Poor number 39.
Oh,
Parker Jones.
Parker Jones.
My God.
Jeez.
That is a household name this morning.
I haven't followed it. Has he deleted all his social media accounts and everything?
I don't know if he's deleted anything, but the content that is out there from like sorority groups and stuff in Athens, he might be an addition to the transfer portal. If he stays, he's a dog.
I felt so bad for that guy.
A real dog.
Kirby Smart had someone literally packing his locker room as they were heading home last night. Like that.
Well, but Kirby would have to know who he is. He kind of gave me that vibe.
No, Kirby is he's the what was Jack Nicholson's character in A Few Good Men. He's definitely calling in a code red on him later tonight.
Oh.
When they get back to
I did want to note with Eddie's stat, the Northern Illinois Notre Dame game 0-0 at the middle eight. So Northern Illinois fought them to a stalemate. Maybe that was a big part of their secret.
Huh? Look, it's just the good thing about the playoffs is you can lose to an NIU now. I mean, you can have just a what the fuck just happened game and still win a national title.
You can if you're Notre Dame.
You
only
can't do
lose
it.
one game.
You can't do it if you're Ole Miss and then have two of those and one of them be against Kentucky.
Right.
Why does everybody act like that's some foreign idea to them? Wait, a football game's going to be settled by the championship's going to be won by a team that lost a shit game in the season? Does nobody watch the NFL? This shit happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
The NFL loses some terrible game or some team gets hot in the playoffs and they win a Super Bowl. Like, it happens. It's not – I don't know why people act like this is some idea they've never considered before. I just don't understand it.
I mean, it happens in college football, like every year. I mean, there's always a team that's lost to somebody.
I mean, somebody
just
lost to the Giants and they lost their first pick.
Well, I mean, that's because they're so terrible. Oh, the Giants?
I mean, the Giants beat someone.
That's because the Colts might be, Josh, unfortunately, they might be one of the most dysfunctional franchises in the professional ranks right now that we didn't know about already. We know the Jets are dysfunctional. We know the Giants,
the Bears,
the Cowboys, the Bears. There's a lot of bad football.
Guys, look at 2017 Oklahoma. They pushed that Georgia team to to overtime, double overtime. They had a chance to, and again, there's a part of me that thinks if they go and play that Alabama team, they win the national title. But they lost to an 8-5 Iowa State team that year on their damn home field.
Rush 3, drop 8.
That was the beginning of Matt Campbell.
You lose some games you shouldn't.
It just happens with some coaches more than others.
That's a fact.
By the way, you mentioned Marvin Mims earlier. Now, he's going as a return specialist to the Pro Bowl. But how much more ridiculous does that make his time at Oklahoma as a punt returner, where punt safe was the norm?
They
for Lincoln
didn't
Riley?
have him back there
in the OSU game.
The OSU game.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Oh, that's because Lincoln knew that he was leaving. He was trying to lose.
That's right.
Didn't Marvin say it on? Was it Gabe?
He was
Teddy,
on the,
or was it
no,
with
he was
us?
on the Family Business. You son of a bitch.
Family Business. Yeah, that's what it was. I was like, that seems right, but I couldn't remember. But that there was like never an explanation for why he wasn't back there.
Yeah, just that that Lincoln told them he was going to go with somebody else, and then they flubbed it. It was Drake, wasn't it?
It's Eric Gray.
Oh, it's Eric Gray. That's right.
Never forget.
Fucking fix, man.
Unbelievable. And how about Nick Bonito? Just a monster season. He's going to be pretty cool. Not only is he in the Pro Bowl, he's a Pro Bowl starter alongside T.J. Watt. Like, what are we talking about? That's crazy.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. I mean,
he's such a good dude.
The money
too,
that
man.
he's going to get, I mean, he's the next OU player that's going to live that like $200 million contract.
It's crazy too, guys, because like when I covered him his rookie year when he first got drafted by the Broncos. I was still in Denver, and I remember talking to him, and he was frustrated that rookie year because he wasn't getting on the field a whole lot, and like they were, trying to develop him, and the coaching staff that was the year of Nathaniel Hackett, and like everybody got fired, and it was just a disaster.
And you hated it so much you needed to get back to Oklahoma,
and it's worked out great. But I remember like him kind of being worried like about his own development and like his first year, and like I was even thinking like, man, like what a wasted year for him, and he's just turned into just a monster. And it just shows it goes to show that like in the NFL especially, and we've seen this with Baker's, like if you can find not only the right organization but the right coaching staff too to help you get along and develop and open things up for you, you can have a heck of a career if you have all the right talent. And I think Nick's a good example of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no better example than Baker. I mean, just seeing what he's gone through.
He got snubbed too, by the way, on the Pro Bowl.
He'll end up there, I think.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can
not
still
if he's
end up
playing
there.
in the Super Bowl.
That's true.
That's true.
But
and
also,
there's not even a game. It's just the honor of being named.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I mean. And it's like I don't think it'll go on his resume as being.
If he were like a late addition or
I don't think you just get to go and have fun at it, but I don't think it gets put on your resume that you were a Pro Bowl guy.
He has some big incentives this week in Week 18. Did you guys see those?
No, I didn't. Like in his contract?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the number, let me look it up, but I'm pretty sure that starting with Mike Evans, he needs to catch 5 receptions and go over like 85 yards, I believe, for $2 million. He gets, okay, here it is. Baker, the quarterback gets, I hate pop-up ads. The quarterback gets $2 million for each category where he sets a new career high: passing yards, passing touchdowns, completion percentage, and passer rating. Oh, no, that's Geno. God damn it.
Oh, I've got it right here. So he'll earn $500,000 if Tampa Bay makes the wild card round.
Sure. So just got to win.
He'll make an additional $500,000 for each round they advance after.
Beautiful.
And he can also cash in with another $500,000 per statistic if he remains in the top 10 amongst NFL quarterbacks or top 5 in the NFC in the following categories: passer rating, touchdown passes, passing yards, completion percentage, or yards per pass.
And he's in the top.
It maxes out at $2.5 million.
He's at the top 5-ish for a number of those. Going into Week 18.
Well, touchdowns, he's second in the league to Joe Burrow.
Does he get $500,000 for each of those marks
per statistic? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so he maxes out at $2.5 million.
Yeah.
His potential incentive earnings can be $5 million if he hits those statistics and wins the Super Bowl.
Geno Smith this weekend has $6 million in incentives on the line, including $2 million if they just win the game.
But here's the biggest single bonus: Mike Evans.
Yeah.
He's got 65 catches, 915 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He needs 5 catches, 85 yards, and he'll get $3 million.
$3 million bonus. All he needs is 5 for 85.
He needs 70 catches and 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, which he's already got.
Kyler has one for, I think he needs over 50 yards rushing to get like 750,000.
What's his prize picks? Is there a prize picks for Mike Evans?
I have no idea.
I'm sure.
It's got to be 85. It's got to be.
We should do this for a scoop, Carrie. If Eddie and I have a dozen YouTube shows in 2 weeks.
Reach 10,000 views.
Yeah.
We'll do a show on everything.
I'm not going to get in. Anyway. So, yeah. I mean, it's going to be fun watching Baker play this weekend. Lane Johnson, did he not make the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, he did.
He did. Okay.
Mike Evans over-unders 105 or 101.5.
Oh, you had 6 guys make the Pro Bowl, right? It was Benito, Mims, Lane Johnson, Creed Humphrey, CeeDee Lamb, and
Baker.
No, Baker.
Or not Baker. Not Baker.
There's one more.
Somebody in a Texans uniform. Who plays?
Oh, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that's exactly okay. I was like, why can I not play? Just because like
Mixon's had a really good year.
Yep.
He has, but I think sorry, Josh. I don't know if you're a Texans fan by proximity down there, but
not at all.
I think the Texans are awful. They can't run the football. C.J. Stroud's had a major setback in year number 2. The injuries at the wide receiver position has been, it sucks. There's not much you can do about that. OU fans know about that. And when you look at the big picture in the AFC, they're just leaps and bounds. I would take the Bengals over the Texans if the Bengals could make the playoffs. They got to get a little bit of help. But it might not matter. I mean, the top 3 teams in the AFC right now are so much better than everybody else.
I'm pretty sure
nobody wants the Bengals in the playoffs. Like that team, the way they can score, like they're going to scare the shit out of somebody if they make it.
I'm pretty sure Tampa Bay will play the loser of Lions-Vikings.
Unless there's like other chaos because the Rams could get into that mix.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right, which is
the most likely scenario.
It's insane to think that the team with almost 4 more wins than Tampa Bay will go down and have to play them in Tampa on Wild Card Weekend if you go lose that game on Sunday night, which I don't think the NFL could have scripted that better. Have the biggest game of the year on the final game of the year.
I know. It's
on
crazy.
Sunday Night Football. It's going to be awesome. Kind of like Minnesota. We'll see. I don't want to go against Dan Campbell, though. They're just so beat up.
How do you guys feel about the because this is kind of coming out there now, the Oregon and Quinn Ewers rumors?
Are they out there? I really haven't seen that.
Like $6 million?
Yeah, there's a bunch
Well, he should do that.
Yeah.
He should do that. If somebody wants to pay you $6 million, you need to go do that.
I mean, Phil Knight just wants to see a championship before he dies. And we didn't talk about the Oregon game, but I feel terrible for DG. I guess we talked about how great Ohio State was.
The game was over by the time the national broadcast
it was
got
like
over there.
It was almost like the South Carolina OU game.
They got swarmed. They got bombarded. It was crazy. Very impressive.
DG could have had like 3 interceptions in that game, too. It could have been a lot
Guys,
worse.
It just seemed they were playing at a different
Jeremiah
speed.
Smith can end up the best college receiver we've seen.
Yeah, knowing that he
He's
still has 2 years left. He might be the best wide receiver in the game right now.
I mean, Ryan Williams is pretty damn
left.
good. I'd like to see Ryan Williams in that offense.
I take Jeremiah Smith just because he's bigger.
He is,
and I think he's more talented. Is that crazy, Josh?
No. I mean, but like, I think when I think to those two, it reminds me of 20 years ago when it was Julio Jones and AJ Green, and it was just like they're both unbelievable, and I don't know who's better, but they're so good and they're so different. But that's who Jeremiah Smith reminds me of. He reminds me of Julio because he's so damn big and strong.
God, he's
and did you see the
6'3".
stuff?
I didn't realize that.
Who's the receiver for Oregon? Their best receiver,
Tess Johnson.
Did you see all the stuff that Nick Saban was told about him? Like he grew up 45 miles from Tuscaloosa's campus. He was he lived with Bo Nix.
Bo Nix's adopted brother.
Like they were
supposed to be like
basically said if I was
ever.
still working, I would fire whoever was responsible for recruiting that kid.
Well, and did you see him after the game, like wait for Will Howard to do his post game and then go give like? And I usually think that shit's cheesy, but it didn't look at all like, oh, look at me, look how good I'm being about it. Like it just looked like a good dude being a good dude.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think Bo Nix, you can say a lot about Bo Nix. I don't think he's a fake guy or his family's fake. I mean, I remember the Heisman stuff. They all seem like a really genuinely good,
good football
down-to-earth family.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure.
Do you remember his dad, Kerry? I remember Patrick. He was a good player.
Yeah. Back in my day.
Exactly. Very, very much that was Terry Bowden, wasn't it? When they had, I think.
I believe
that
was
a year under him.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. All right, man. I think that's just about going to do it for us today. Looking forward to the semifinals. Looking forward to seeing what shakes out in the portal. We'll definitely be keeping you updated and be looking forward to a weekend. Which holidays are great. But my God, I don't know what day it is or what.
I hate to put it like this because I do love like the holiday season. I love Christmas, all that kind of stuff. I'm ready to get back to normal. This Monday.
You are a man of structure. Yes.
I want to be back in the regular grind.
We got basketball just really starting to heat up too now.
Yeah.
It's like
conference play begins.
That was a tough game to watch last night.
The women get beat last night. It's hard to win a 7th grade game over at Cooper if you go 2 for 16 and you turn the ball over 27 times.
Yeah, it was not pretty.
And the refs, at one point they
the
had
refs were
more
so bad
fouls than field goals when you combine it with both.
And
teams.
then they took a 12-minute review.
They called 53 fouls last night. It's crazy.
It was insane.
And 53 of them, and then it was that one dude. He must have called
the mustache guy.
Yeah, I bet he called 30-something of those.
Foul.
It was awful.
Don't foul.
It was bad. It was bad.
And you
and Texas is good, by the way.
They are really good. But also you add the hecticness of OU's tempo into that, and it's just it's kind of just like a Jackson Pollock painting. It's just a big mess.
Yeah, it was sloppy. I don't know. That was probably the maddest I've ever seen Ginny after a game.
Really?
Yeah,
she's pissed.
How was the crowd? It looked good on TV.
It was good.
Great crowd.
Well, that's good.
It was good. I think that they were. She was very. She opened like the press conference with like an apology for everybody came out and nobody played well, but it is what it is. I think they're still pretty good.
Yeah, OU's good. I think there's a lot of good teams in women's college basketball right now, especially in the SEC. Like it's not going to get easy.
I'm not going to lie. I think Eddie and I both thought maybe it could go very sideways yesterday. Like it might turn into a blowout, but
I don't think I thought it was going to be a blowout. I just didn't really know.
You just wanted to go home at halftime.
I mean, OU punched him in the
9:30.
OU punched him in the face in the first quarter.
Yeah, I thought after the first quarter they're up by 12. I was like, damn, they played really well. And then I think they probably scored like 30 points the rest of the game, the last three quarters.
I'll be curious to see this men's team at Alabama because
it's going to be tough.
As much as these guys have played close games, have they really been punched in the face by anybody this year? Maybe Louisville a little bit.
Michigan
a little bit. Yeah, Michigan being the go-to game. But
Michigan was a escape.
It's if you can go down and really compete with Alabama, you can go compete with anybody in the country.
I agree.
They got the length that they have inside in the front court with Grant Nelson, who's a really good player. The Yamori kid that came down from Rutgers, that's a big shot blocker. Like you thought that the 7-footers for Michigan gave them problems. I think these guys are a little bit more talented with Alabama, and the backcourt for Alabama is led by one of the most veteran players in college basketball, maybe the best point guard in college basketball, and the Mark Spears kid.
I know it's not like brand new like the SEC, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that Kelvin Sampson just played in Gallagher-Iba.
Yeah, beat that ass too.
Houston's playing in the Big 12, and Kelvin's
they're going to really struggle. Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Alabama still is kind of finding their way without the right cell kid. I think he tore his ACL, but they're going to be really good. I mean, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky to a certain extent, Florida, A&M with Wade Taylor. That's SEC's really, really good.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it. We will see you guys. We'll be back on a regular schedule next week, but wanted to come in and do an extra pod this week just to kind of wrap things up from the week, and we'll keep you updated on what's going on with the inner workings of the football facilities, general manager stuff, and certainly defensive coordinator stuff and poor reports. So just stay on Soonerscoop.com. Remember, you sign up for 7 days for just $1. Try it out, see what you think. And, appreciate you guys being a part of all of this. And we'll see you guys here back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.